We will call the
So the news.
May Rules Committee to order. At this time, Mr. Harley, would you give the lesson?
Dear Heavenly Father, we gather here today to take care of the business of the Cherokee people. We ask that you give us guidance, keep your hand upon each and every one of us. Thank you for traveling safe grace to Telecom and also going back to our homes. We ask a special request for all the people that are suffering from this COVID-19 disease and ask you to put your hand upon those people, and put your hand on the families and help the people that need the help. We come here today to ask for your guidance and keep your hand upon us at this meeting. And I ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. Amen.
Roll call, Shelley?
Yes, sir. Joe Bird,
Honey?
Hayden Duncan, Keith Austin,
Here.
Harley Buzzard,
Here.
Julia Coates, Sean Crittenden,
Amen.
Joe Deere, Mike Dobbins,
Here.
Rex Jordan,
Here.
Darrell Legg,
Here.
Wes Snowfire,
Amen.
Laura Petzkowski,
Here.
Mike Shambaugh,
Here.
Mary Bakershaw, E.O. Smith,
Here.
Janice Taylor,
Here.
Victoria Vasquez.
Aye.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, at this time, I'd entertain approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Old business, none pending, new business. This is discussion only. This is an act to adopt the Emergency Management Code and authorize establishment of an Office of Emergency Management. We have a emergency management group already in place, but the code is very limited in what it points out. So it is a responsibility of the tribal council to pass legislation that would give the authority to the executive branch to carry out those duties. And we looked at some of the other tribes that had one of these in place. Of course, the uncertainty of what we've been experiencing here at Cherokee Nation. We had the flood last year. We've got this year. So I've talked to Chief and I've talked to Shannon Buell about this and Todd somewhat, but this is discussion only. So we will, if you have any input, we'll welcome it now. But we'll probably discuss this only, maybe pass it by next month if that's okay. So if anybody's got any questions or comments, feel free to speak up. Yes.
I guess if you say this is a limited, I haven't seen what this is going to encompass about what this emergency management system is going to, the services it's going to provide. But if it's going to be a full emergency management system, it's not just about disasters and reacting to disasters. There has to be some availability to the Marshal Service if they need it, and with lighting. I mean, do we have that kind of equipment for our emergency management? Do we have the lighting? And and you're talking about communities, it's tornado season, and that's the thing about going in our Indian communities, making sure that we maybe get sirens in our communities. I mean, and showing up, looking at the weather whenever bad weather's coming in. I mean, having volunteers come in. If it's a full emergency management system, it encompasses a lot of different things.
Sure.
And not just in emergencies. You kind of do things preventive before. I would hope if we do one that's the route we take.
Sure.
We make it a full-blown emergency management system.
And most of that is covered in that. Once you read it, you'll get an idea about what it entails. But Tim, you want to take off on this and tell us where we got most of the information?
Well, I reached out to the AG, and she directed me to the existing emergency management department that is under the Marshal. So then I reached out to the Marshal and had discussions with him regarding what they were currently doing, because that was my goal, was not to change things, but ultimately just codify the way that we're already doing it. There is not anything in the Marshal's code that authorizes an emergency management And that was the purpose of this emergency management code, was to properly authorize the operation of this division or department under the marshal. So I talked to him about that, and we're open to any input from the marshal or from the chief and the executive. It's ultimately up to the council to decide what they want in there. One of the issues that the marshal had identified was his lack of authority in cases of emergency to essentially commandeer other agencies or other departments within the Cherokee Nation. And so that's one of the specific areas that's addressed in this code, was that it would authorize the director of this emergency management department or emergency management office to utilize all the resources that Cherokee Nation currently has. And it would also authorize them to expand those needs, or expand those assets and resources as necessary. And so, any input I think would probably be beneficial to the overall end product. So, if you've got, obviously, Mike, you've got great experience with this specifically. So, any input you have, we can definitely try to weave it in there and make sure that we have the best product when it comes time to pass the end code.
I know that anytime there's a disaster and emergency, the emergency management takes pictures of what they're doing and what's going on, and, they can get reimbursed by FEMA for what they've done. I don't know if we've done that or not, but, that's something that needs to be done if it's not.
Well, I don't think the intent is to change anything that we're doing. I think it's just to, like I told the marshal, was that we want to make sure that his people are covered when it comes to being properly authorized, and it's better to have that authority in the code, in our laws, than it is to operate kind of in a gray area where there's nothing that really backs up what they're doing.
Well, and that's so essential to be able to contact other entities or other tribes for help. I think that would be the best case scenario. That's awesome if we could do that. That would help us immensely and help the other tribes too. We could help them too, and if they needed help. So
Absolutely.
Chief, did you have something to add?
Very briefly, I know the time is limited. I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that we work off the statute that we have. I've had extensive conversations with the marshal, and I believe you've had some. I think that we've seen us act very effectively, commandeering, if you want to borrow that term, resources within the nation when the need arises. And so we have an emergency management team, even people from other departments are called in, and they're obliged to come and leave their departments and go provide resources when there's emergencies. What I'd suggest is we get a little bit beyond this immediate crisis, which I believe we're handling well, that we look at the existing statute. I reviewed this. There's a few things in there that I think I wouldn't necessarily agree we need to do, but I think that's why we need to have some continued discussion. I think it's difficult to have the discussion in the environment where we're compressed for time, and we really need to have, I think, a more extensive dialogue, particularly with people that have more expertise than I did within the administration. That would include Mr. Enlow, that would include the marshal, include our emergency management folks. So that's what I would offer. So I don't know that we accomplish this by next month, in my view, doing it in a way that we need to.
Anybody else? Yes, Councilman O'Farrell.
So, from my understanding of it, I guess is that we've there's two separate. There's a code, I guess, that they're operating on, but it's not to the full effect of what we're trying to give them the permission to do legally of how we're supposed to operate. I think is what I guess Tim was kind of getting to. I'm definitely thinking that we need to make sure that we do those things so our marshal's service can have those proper authority to act. As far as time constraints go, last month was definitely one of those ones we definitely wanted to be in, the time constraining matter, because we wanted to make the approval to where we could do things remotely like what we're doing with our council members now. I don't think it's necessary to say that we need to put a hold on anything just because of the time that we're in. In fact, it's more of a reason for us to expand time if necessary. We can remote call in if necessary, so things like this don't get held up because we're afraid of time restraint, I guess. So that's just what I had a comment on. I mean, I'm still grasping the concept of it, Speaker, and I think it's a great idea that what Tim put forward on it, and definitely like to look at it and try to get things done right.
I had a lengthy conversation with Marshall Buell, and he said there's some things that he'd like to add and change to this. And of course, he's been handling most of our emergency issues right now, and said yes. So I was waiting to see what he had to offer on this. It was like the rescue of the two young kids, and I know some of you guys been following that. You know, the resources that those people were able to reach out to. You know, Cherokee Nation Marshal Service, where they were involved in, you know, they're always involved in these national searches, and we have that capability. Then they had the Wagner County, they had Tulsa County. You know, that's impressive when you can reach out and you have that authority to utilize every resource that you have. And I think that's all we're trying to do here. But we want to do it in the right way and make sure the guy that's in charge currently, Marshall Buell, has his input as well. So, Chief?
Mr. Speaker, just briefly, if any member of the council wants to get this done by next month, keep in mind, I think by any objective standards, we have acted effectively in this crisis, which is a crisis of generations. So in some respects, if it's not broke, why you want to fix it? But there are some things we could do. If there is a need to get this done 30 days from now, I will pull off anyone from emergency management from what they're doing right now to visit with the council about these things. I think there's significant legal and constitutional issues within this that we have to look at, but if the council asks us to do that, we will shift resources over to get this issue done within 30 days if that's the desire of the council.
Okay. I don't feel like we have to do it in 30 days. I just feel like it's something that's needed. You know, I've been asked, and I saw how we were going to spend our COVID money. Well, if we had this in place, you could justify a lot of the things, and we already are. And I want to come into administration for how they're justifying the spending, because executive branch and then the executive directors are all going to have to be very creative and innovative in anything that we do from here on. How do we relate that back to, you know, the COVID-19 expenditures there? Because the government is giving us some funds, but very strict on how we can spend those funds. So, you know, we're going to have to get a little creative with that. Chief of Staff, you got anything to add?
Just briefly, a couple things that we'd like you guys to all keep in mind is emergency management is not just the response in the times that we have a flood or a tornado, or in this case, a pandemic. It's also the planning, the partnerships. We have multiple mutual aid agreements with counties, fire departments, for them to help us to help them in a time of crisis or emergency. It's relationships with American Red Cross. It's relationships with United Way, so that when we need those resources or they need those resources, we're there for one another, because the tornado doesn't just pick Cherokee houses or non-Cherokee houses. Flooding doesn't just affect Cherokee households. So in addition to those partnerships that we're working on constantly, it's also mitigation planning. What things can we do to prevent that in the future? And that's one of the things that you'll hear in the executive finance meeting. And some of the things that we've done now is trying to prevent the future spread of another pandemic. Ways that we can implement technology, ways that we can buy PPE resources, make those available to communities, make those available to our employees. And so I've been involved with emergency management for, seems like 20 years, but I think it's just a little less than 20 years. So my first experience with emergency management was the ice storms of 2007 and then in 2008. I will tell you, in every case, we stand up emergency management, which has an incident command team, which represent members from across the Cherokee Nation, different programs, different resources, different expertises, from healthcare to GIS to human services. And all of those individuals come together and they respond based on what that need is. So we've already got the infrastructure there of employees. And then off of that, anytime that we need to pull in additional resources, we do pull in those resources from across not only the government, but also in this case, with pandemic, we reached out to Cherokee Nation businesses for assistance. So we do have a pretty sophisticated infrastructure there already. There is money in the budget for the emergency management department, and there's also has been a placeholder budget for those immediate responses that we have to have. We need a little bit of cash to seed that response, but we do work with FEMA. We do work through the state of Oklahoma for some of our funding and reimbursement that we get back. These last two occasions with the flooding, we went direct to FEMA. In the past, we've also gone through the state. So we have a pretty sophisticated system that we've been operating for about the last 17, 18 years now. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, but I just want to provide a little bit of history and then also let you know what that infrastructure is out there that you may not get to see each and every day, but there is a team. And in the particular case of the pandemic, our first meeting that we pulled together with our incident command team involved the Marshal Service, our health teams, our facilities. Trying to remember, I think Deputy Chief was in that meeting with me, and we had two other departments, and we brought those teams together and said, this is on the horizon, what are we going to do to address it? And we started work in February on this issue. So that team was activated as early as February in this particular case. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Buzzer.
I guess the two questions I've got is, why do we need this code? And why are is there anything why we shouldn't have the code? I think you explained why we probably need the code, but I haven't heard anything said why we shouldn't have the code. Does the administration have any input on that?
If you're asking me, Councilman, if I could, Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead, Chief.
It's not the administration's position that we don't need a legal basis for emergency management. Let me be clear, we have that, or we wouldn't be doing anything in emergency management, because we wouldn't have a legal basis to do so. If we need to improve the code, I'm all for it.
So you're saying we do have a code now?
We have a legal basis. We have
Do you have, is it a code or a policy?
Well, we have a policy, but you
Okay.
can't have a policy without a legal basis for doing so, Councilman.
Okay.
So insofar as this code's concerned, I see problems with the draft. I'll be blunt with you if we want to get into discussions. I see significant problems with the draft, constitutional and legal and policy. I'm happy to work on it, and I've expressed that to the Speaker. If we want to work on it the next 30 days, if that's the desire of the council, I'll pull every resource I can off the work they're doing, and we'll get this done. But I think we need to do it in a more deliberate way, is my suggestion. And my suggestion that we do so outside of a pandemic, I don't think is unreasonable. Thank you.
Councilor Buzzer, is that good?
Well, I think he's probably right. I think that then we're not going to pass it today, and I don't know if we have to pass it in the next 30 days, but I do think we need a code that applies to the
Sure.
Cherokee Nation. We have codes for our other departments, so why not this one? So,
Yeah, and you know, I said 30 days earlier. But all this would do, we have, the code that we have in place is very limited, and the executive branch has really taken this and done an outstanding job with what we have in place. All we're trying to do is, from the council standpoint, is we want to make sure they have unlimited resources. And it's supported by the current code we have, but we're going above and beyond that. And I don't see a time limit there, but I do see a need for this code.
well, I would suggest that we get some information. And stuff
Yeah,
back
and I sure don't want the executive branch to pull anybody off of what we're currently addressing.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not proposing that at all, you know, but I think it's something that we need to look at, and something that we all need to have input on, and it's needed. But I'm not saying no, we're gonna call time out and get away from what we're doing and just look at this, but I do believe it's needed. Yes, Councilor Critton.
Yes, I was just going to add that, you know, we talk about a lot of things here, but isn't it good to talk about this? Because we have such a strong infrastructure to build on. Those guys have bailed mine and Canaan's area out several times, and it's a good thing. If we need to tighten up some things and add some things, that's great, but I was just sitting here thinking, man, we're discussing we're not going from the bottom. I mean, we were already doing things right.
Right.
And so it's just gonna get better, I guess, but they're doing a heck of a job. I've seen the main guy with mud all over him lifting, water bottles to the folks at Oak Ridge. That's just one example and stuff, so I applaud them, and yet I'll be more than willing to discuss some of the things we may need to tighten up.
Oh, absolutely. I applaud them wholeheartedly. They're taking the lead right now. If the state would learn from us, we'd be far ahead of this game right now, and the federal people. So, yeah, I applaud what we're doing. I just want to make it better.
Right.
Anybody else? Yes.
I've got a real quick thing. First of all, I agree with everybody applauding the Cherokee Nation Marshals. With these amendments that we're talking about, Tim, can this increase things that we could use the COVID money for, like, soon? Like, things they would need as far as vehicles and different things for the emergency management part?
I can't speak to what it would do, but just to clarify, there is no code for emergency management. There's a marshal's code, but emergency management is not in the marshal's code, not one time. The word emergency is not in the code one time. I searched our entire code.
Yeah.
I called the AG, she said it's currently being operated under executive authority.
Right.
That's it, there's no code. I mean, that's the thing, that this idea that we're amending a code, or that there's an existing code, there is no code that authorizes emergency management, anything within Cherokee Nation.
Okay.
There is a current infrastructure, which is great, which is exactly what I identified as we want to codify, which is put into writing what they're already doing. We want to support it with legislation, so that way they're not acting without authority.
Right.
And
Yeah, I
that's
get
the
that.
thing
I was
explained
just
to Shannon-
going with what
Shannon
Shambo was saying here, to make sure they have everything now and going forward, that they have more on what they need to do their job.
I think
Because
that
they're already
that's my
here, so
My
we're trying
goal
to
is
take it to again.
is to work with the marshal, work with the chief, work with AG, figure out what components do they want in there. I talked to the marshal 3 times so far. The first time he was very helpful, gave me different things he wanted to take out. He did not want to have certain authorities, so I took those things out. He didn't want to do certain things, so I changed it. But then the last time I talked to him, he said that there was a problem with every single paragraph, and that there were 4 issues that made it unconstitutional. He could only identify 1, which after my review, I completely disagree, but that's really for the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court to decide.
Okay.
But ultimately, I can't answer your question as far as what they can use the COVID money for. I think what this does is it just supports what our existing infrastructure. Those guys that have been helping us out all this time, it covers it. And that's the thing I specifically told the marshal. I said, when your guys are out there, we want to support them 100%. We don't want to put them personally liable whenever they're acting without authority. That's why we have codes. We have to exercise our sovereignty to protect the people that are working within our departments. And so that's specifically, I'm just trying to protect the people that work here at Cherokee Nation that are helping us during these emergency times.
Okay. Yeah, I got what I need of it. Go ahead.
And I wanted to make sure that our Marshal Shannon Buell had the final say-so and had the final input in this before it was ever presented. I want to give him that courtesy because he's the expert on this. I'm definitely not. Anybody else? Yes.
I just wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, that, I've had conversations with Marshal Buell about this. I don't know nothing about Cherokee Nation's emergency management. It's operating illegally or without authority. The marshal is a constitutional position. Emergency management operates under his office. He and I talk frequently about if there are any issues that do arise or there are concerns about his authority. We have those conversations all the time, and I'm not concerned. I am not concerned about the way that emergency management operates because it's sort of grown up organically inside Cherokee Nation, inside the departments that already exist. And the marshal uses his authority and the authority of the Cherokee Nation to do the work that they do. So, and also I think it's the emergency management code that's been proposed did not come from Cherokee Nation. It was not built from Cherokee Nation's departments. It was not created by those folks that do that work. And so I think it's easy to take a model from a different tribe and say, well, we want to do the exact same thing here, but we know that Cherokee Nation, Oklahoma Indian Country is unique, and our jurisdictional issues that we deal with here are unique. And so I definitely appreciate the council giving the the people that do this work every day to come to you with the request that they have, this is the authority we feel we need, instead of trying to sort of impose that on them without their engagement. So I appreciate you taking the time and being willing to hear, the concerns of the departments, and I know I've talked to Marshall about this. It's not that he's opposed to a code, I think we both want to be sure that the code speaks to the problems that we actually face versus speaking of problems that maybe, that tribes face in other places, but that we don't face here.
Absolutely. Good point. Yeah, we're just trying to make it better. I mean, I think we're all saying the same thing here. If we can make it better with what you have in place and what we're proposing, then that's all we do. And right now, we've got something really good in place. We're just trying to make it better. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Shelley, we need to move on. Okay. All right. That concludes our Rules Committee meeting. Discussion only. We don't need to make any movement on that. Just
Want to
carry it
table
on.
it for discussion next month, or you just want it to?
We'll just put discussion on there. Just put discussion on there.
So we need to table it for
Yeah.
next month? We'll need a motion and a second.
Make a motion to table to next month.
Motion to table.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Signify by saying aye. Okay. All right. Any announcements? The next meeting is scheduled for June 25th. Is that correct?
If we stay on our normal schedule, yes.
Okay.
That would be the normal June meetings.
For right now, let's do that. Okay. All right. Motion to adjourn. Motion second.